The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA.
Hi, this is Bryan Bassett of FOGHAT. You're listening to the Dr. Sky Experience on Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome to the Dr. Sky Experience, heard here on Talk Radio 77 WABC, the crown jewel of radio, the iconic 77 Talk Radio, beaming out of New York City, around the nation, around the world, and I'm sure even out into the cosmos. As we talk today with the most amazing guest, we'll be introducing Bryan Bassett of that iconic rock band FOGHAT, with a brand new album, folks, that you're going to be hearing some excerpts on this particular show today, entitled Sonic Mojo. And again, the Dr. Sky Experience covers all types of content from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and today, we're in good hands. Bryan Bassett has over 40 years' experience as a professional musician and recording artist, and 30 years' experience as a recording engineer and producer. From 1999 to the present, a guitarist, international recording artist FOGHAT. Bryan is a songwriter, guitarist, engineer, and producer who has worked on FOGHAT's Return of the Boogeyman, Road Cases, Family Jewels, Live 2, the official bootleg DVD, Volume 1, not live at the BBC, Last Train Home, their last DVD, Live in St. Pete, Under the Influence, and how about it, live at the Belly Up. And with that, I'd like to welcome Bryan. Welcome to the show today. This is exciting stuff about this amazing band, FOGHAT. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for that great introduction, and a pleasure to be here.
Well, always likewise, and I say this, it's amazing because, you know, I go back in my high school days. Yeah, I'm not old, back in 1972, and I'm just listening to FOGHAT then, and I'm just listening to one of those songs that just about everybody knows, and shame on them if they don't, Just Want to Make Love to You. Now, I understand that was a Willie Dixon song before FOGHAT actually did their, iteration of that. Talk a little bit about that, because that comes from what? A great blues artist, if I'm correct. Is that right?
That's right. That was the first big hit for FOGHAT back in probably 71. It was an old blues song that FOGHAT took into the laboratory and put their rock and roll on top of it, and became the first big hit for the band.
Well, here we go. I'm going to read this because this is important for people to hear, and we'll get into it and ask you questions about it. Sonic Mojo is exactly what FOGHAT will be bringing to their loyal legion of fans on November 10th in the form of a highly anticipated and long-awaited 17th studio album, their first in 7 years on the band's label FOGHAT Records, which is distributed, as you know, by Selecto Hits, part of the Sun Records family. But how about this? This is even cooler for everybody out there that's a vinyl fan. It'll be available as what? As a single CD with 12 tracks, and then also an 11-track limited edition 180-gram purple neon vinyl. Now, that's really cool. That's something we all got to get as we talk about the classic songs of FOGHAT and this new album here.
It's nice to see vinyl have another day in the sun, with liner notes that I can actually read. a lot of ways to put pictures and some biography stuff on there. So it's a great format, and it's nice to see people embracing it again.
Well, Bryan, it's great to have you here on this it's great to have you on the Dr. Sky Experience. Tell us a little bit about this, in case people are like, they were too young to know what FOGHAT, as far as a rock and roll band, an iconic band. Just talk a little bit about how FOGHAT began and a little bit of your experiences, of course, over the years, knowing FOGHAT and now being part of this iconic band.
Yes, I had many years of a career before I met Lonesome Dave in Orlando, Florida, around 1989. But I had a band called Wild Cherry in the 70s. We had a hit record with Play That Funky Music, and toured with all R&B great bands of the era. Commodores, Earth, Wind and Fire, Jackson 5, many, many more, Isley Brothers, and so I did that for several years in the 70s. I moved to Florida, became involved with a blues record label called King Snake Records, and we did many, many releases, dozens, if not, close to over probably 50 or 60 record releases. And I had a blues quartet in Orlando, so I was an engineer for several years, 6, 7 years. Had a blues quartet that performed in the Orlando area. We played some eclectic music by what we call swamp rockers, Lazy Lester, Lightning Slim, Lonesome Sundown, very, off-the-wall kind of blues. Lonesome Dave came to our club to see us play, brought there by my friend Pat Travers. Dave knew all our songs, being the blues historian that he is and was, and a blues record collector. Sat in with us, and we became best friends. And when he decided to go back out on tour, he asked me to join his touring band, and that was my introduction to the FOGHAT family. We played together for about 5 years. Rod Price, the original guitar player, came out of retirement, and FOGHAT reformed with all its original members at the behest of Rick Rubin, the great record producer. He wanted to do a record with FOGHAT in the early 90s. So I actually joined Molly Hatchet then. I had been on tour with them in Europe and got to know Danny Joe Bryan. He asked me to join his band. I did that for 7 years, and then in 1999, Lonesome Dave gave me a call and asked me to come back to FOGHAT, and I've been here ever since.
That's an amazing story, Bryan. And again, this is interesting. We talked to a lot of those musicians, as yourself, a guitarist, and much more. But it's interesting when we talk to somebody that's also part, as they do this whole thing in the engineering side and the production side of music. And that's interesting because if I'm right, and I think I am on this one, very few have both sides of the equation. I mean, when you're performing, that's one thing to par excellence. And then the other side, as they say, the man behind the curtain, you understand both sides of the equation. Talk about the engineering side, because I very rarely get to talk to anybody in the music world that has this experience. So the importance of that is quite obvious. But maybe people don't realize all the technicalities that go into that.
It was always a part of the music, creation process that I was fascinated in. In fact, when I was a young person and getting in some of my first bands, I was the guy that had the 4-track TAC tape recorder, and along with my guitar and amp, and I would bring it to practices. And I started, fooling around recording my early garage band, and it was just an interest I always had. And when I moved to Florida some years later, and I met Bob Greenlee, the owner of King Snake Records, he asked me to come to his studio, and I already had some rudimentary idea of how to, record. I was familiar with mixing consoles and all this, the technical side of things. And Pete Carr was a Daytona Beach native, but it was, of course, a very famous Muscle Shoals guitarist, played on dozens and dozens of platinum records. And I was also a great engineer. And so when I moved into that studio, it was just being redone as a 24-track, 2-inch tape studio, up from an 8 or 16-track home studio. And Pete was there as well. So I learned so much about the engineering, really professional engineering, from him. And we were co-engineers there for several years and did King Snake, several of their early records we did together. So I learned quite a bit, about modern technique in recording. And, I've always loved it. And it always served me well as a B career. If I wasn't touring or wasn't making much money playing, I could always, go do some studio gigs. So it was a nice sideline. And it's served us well in my years with FOGHAT. I've become the in-house engineer and producer for most of the FOGHAT releases since 1999.
Well, kudos to you, Bryan. I mean, it's great to listen to how these particular pieces of music get constructed. And nowadays, everything's digital. So do you think it's a lot easier nowadays that everything's done in the digital world than the old way? Or maybe that's one of the craziest questions you've ever had, because it's so obvious. Well,
I've seen over the years, I pretty much transitioned from a total analog studio, which was our blues studio, King Snake Records, where we were almost anti-digital. But there wasn't much digital then. I think the first thing that we let into our studio were the DAT tapes for mastering and mixing to. And then, of course, CDs came out, and then the ADAT made by the company Alesis. And so I saw that transition from analog to digital. There was always a raging engineering battle talking about, the benefits of analog versus digital. The early digital equipment didn't sound that good in my estimation, but now it's everywhere, and that's what everybody's using. I've been using it for several years on Pro Tools and
Yes.
And what's amazing and really great, I think, for particularly young musicians now, in the old days, it would cost close to $250,000 to $500,000 to put together a professional recording studio. And now you can do the same thing on a Mac laptop and a hard drive and a bunch of microphones. So from that standpoint, and then of course the internet and digital distribution, a band can go in and make their own record. And I'm sure almost every band has somebody like me in it now that knows how to run the equipment. And you can make your own record, set up your own little business, get your record out there. In the old days, that was impossible. You had to have a record company in the old days to make the vinyl, and get it distributed and it was all about radio then. It was getting your record played on the radio stations, and that took a promotional department and the power of a record company. So that's totally changed now in these, 2020s. And so it's a double-edged sword, but the audio quality, I think, is now totally there as it was then, and the amount of freedom you have to edit and mix and everything is, out of this world compared to what we had in the old days.
Absolutely. Well, other than hearing a great guitarist,
one thing that got lost, some bands preserve it, and I try to keep it in my recording technique, is the actual process of writing and pre-production of songs, and making sure the songs are ready to go. Once you get into the studio, the band's well rehearsed, and so, and then you capture 90% of the music live by people just playing in the room. So a little bit of that has been lost, but a lot of bands still prefer to play that way as we do. I try to capture as much of our songs on a
it's amazing.
take and minimal overdubs.
Mm-hmm. Well, other than hearing yourself as a great guitarist, we're going to hear the production experience that you bring to the table on Sonic Mojo. But now it's time to introduce the rest of the band members, of course, as we've done yourself. Founding member, drummer, and leader of the pack, Roger Earl, is joined by stalwart guitarist and engineers. We've been talking to you, co-producer Bryan Bassett. Your experience with Wild Cherry, as I mentioned, Molly Hatchet. Fun-loving, low-end thumper, fan-favorite bassist, Rod Neal Quinn, Pat Travers Band, and on lead vocals and guitar, Scott Holt, Buddy Guy, who has been the single guitarist of the band's recent side project, Earl and the Agitators, since 2015. And in typical FOGHAT fashion, we're going to have some surprises that we're going to talk about here. And just to let the audience understand a little bit more about FOGHAT's latest album here, this is incredible, the 17th studio album. We're going to actually play Driving On. This is amazing. So here we go, folks. Driving On from FOGHAT's Sonic Mojo.
It's 2 a.m., long way to go. It's dark all over, the moon's starting to glow. Gotta stay awake, no matter what I do. Wanna see my girl when the night is through. I'm driving on, and I gotta be strong, and it won't be long. I'm driving on. She'll be waiting for me to pull in. I'll be so happy to let loving begin. I've been away, couldn't get home. Now I'm ready, been too long gone. And I'm driving on, and I gotta be strong, and it won't be long. I'm driving on. getting late. I'm speeding up. No, I can't wait. I'm driving on, and I gotta be strong. And it won't be long till I'm driving on. I'm driving on, and I gotta be strong. And it won't be long. I'm driving on.
Well, I think that's awesome, Brian. And we find out that the band is traveling. You've got a pretty busy schedule here, but for our audience here, and audiences all around the nation, two that I've highlighted here of concerts that are coming up as you're listening to me, the Dr. Sky Experience here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. We find out in my area out here in the West, you'll be in Laughlin, Nevada on Saturday, October the 28th at the Edgewater Resort. And then for all of our New York area friends, how about this? At the Hard Rock Casino Hotel in Atlantic City, Saturday, December the 9th. Don't miss it. So I wanted to get your take on this. I mean, talk a little bit more about these tracks. You have 12 on this particular album. It officially is released as a what date that people can actually get it wherever good music is sold. Tell us about that.
Yeah, our official release date is November 10th, and that's when the full album's going to come out. We actually have 3 pre-releases. Driving On, as you mentioned, and a little bit of everything. And I Don't Appreciate You are the 3 songs that we pre-released, and they're available on, and we have some video to go along with them, so they're pretty much on the internet and all your favorite places. And yeah, we're really looking forward to it. You know, so we're going to do some record release parties, one at the Iridium Club in New York and one at the Coach House out in LA. So we're looking forward to doing that and performing, you know, the album live. So that's great. And
you bet.
That was one of the things I was hoping to accomplish on this particular record, was keep the songs simple enough and not overproduced, so that we could translate them to the stage and our 2 guitar, bass, drum setup. So we're happy that that's been turning out to be the case. We're playing 3 of the songs in our set right now, and probably many more as time goes on.
Well, just a little bit more history I'm going to give the audience here. The first of 3, Kim Simmons co-writing Driving On, is the debut single, as we're talking about here on Sonic Mojo. Vocalist guitarist Scott Holt smiles as he proudly sums up what this bluesy rocker means to the band. A song like Driving On, as they say, celebrates the swamp funk blues of Slim Harpo and the cosmic boogie of John Lee Hooker. Part blues, part ZZ Top, and part FOGHAT. This tune is destined to become a live fan favorite. Well said. Well done. And I want to thank you for being with us today, Brian, and on this particular radio archive here, the Dr. Sky Experience. And they can learn much more about the band by going to simply FOGHAT.com. What a great, easy way to find you guys on the internet. And of course, you have you're up there on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. We're all social media live. Thank you. You get the last word. Anything you want to jump in on here that we didn't cover in our short interview today, but a very interesting one.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Like you said, go to FOGHAT.com for all your FOGHAT needs. And please come on out and see a live show. I mean, we love playing. We have a good time doing it. And a party will be had by all. So come out and check us out. Our tour dates are all on FOGHAT.com. And we put them right up there as they come in. So for near you, come on out and rock.
Well, thank you, my friend. Rock lives, rock continues, and FOGHAT is a big part of it. Stay on the line with us as we go to the hard break at the bottom of the hour. Obviously, the talk radio show here that people tell us they love so much on 77 WABC is the Dr. Sky Experience, beaming out of New York, around the nation, around the world, and I'm sure all the way out into the cosmos. Dr. Sky always reminds everybody to keep your feet on the ground, keep your eyes to the skies as we continue to rock all the universe, all the time, with great guests. Thank you, Brian, for joining us, and stay on the line with us, please. Thank you.
Sure will. Thank you.